Okay, so I'm going to turn you down again and put myself up in the corner. Now I have a silicone mat down. Because I'm going to use watercolour sprays, glimmer sprays, a bit of alcohol ink. Let's stick me pinny on because I had that panic that I was stupidly wearing a cream jumper. But hey ho. So you've got 3 different ways of doing it. Now unfortunately our watercolour sprays are out of stock on the website, all apart from Ruby, which might have gone by now. But what you can also do, if you're using your sprays, if you don't have a glass mat, a silicone mat, one of the cutting mats, they're always really good to colour on because you can just, you know, wipe them clean afterwards. You can also use the spray booths. It's a DIY spray booth. I use the boxes that all of the kits come in. So you may have seen me do this before. I'm going to do a watercolour spray just because if you did get any of them from Create and Craft TV last week while we had them on offer, then this will just act as that little reminder for you. So the boxes that a lot of my kits come in, I use as a spray booth. So I will just take my tool, pop a hole through it because of course that is now the perfect size for my stem. I'm going to break apart that lovely arrangement that I just made because I haven't got another flower to use. So I'm going to use the peony. I'm going to pop this one in and that will sit in exactly that hole that I've got for my stem. Now 2 of my favourite colours to use are mango and ruby, or mango and English rose. I've got ruby to hand, so that's the one that I'm going to use. So these are the Craft Buddy watercolour sprays. You could use any watercolour spray, and in this sense I complete the full flower before colouring it. So I'm just going to go on with the watercolour spray all the way around the outside. Now if you don't mind getting inky fingers at this point, you can take it out of that hole. The reason I put it in the hole is because I don't want to be chasing it around, and it just centralises it, keeps it in the right space, and they're already, obviously because I've got the ring lights on as well, it's quite warm. You could encourage this to dry quicker with a heat gun, very low heat, because remember this is polyester fabric. But already this is starting to diffuse. I've got where the raw edges of the fabric will hold on to a much deeper saturation. It's going to start to go through those lovely petals. Now I like to go in with a second colour. So something like mango, or what was the other one we had? Nectar. They look really beautiful. And if I saturate that only on the inside, so just in the very centre, the stamens are plastic, so it's not really going to hold on to it all. But now if I allow that to dry, and I'm just going to move this one out of the way, if I allow that to dry naturally, this is English rose and nectar. Look at how it dries. You get a really beautiful variegated colour. Well, this might actually be English rose and ruby. You get a really beautiful finish on them. I also have some that are slightly orange. I'll share lots of pictures afterwards on the Forever Flowerz fans page, because I know colouring them is always something that you love to do. But that's how you can achieve that lovely finish very simply. So I don't ever encourage this finish. It's not me being creative, it is just the way that the paints dry, and you will still get a lovely effect like I had showed you. Oh, here it is. Silly me. I've got another one. Just like I showed you on the chrysanthemum, this was the blackberry, and you can see where it just gives you a variegated effect on the petal and holds on to that colour on the outside edges. This was another one, 2 of the watercolour sprays. So you've got a darker, deeper colour, softer on the inside. And we sell kits that are pre-coloured like this, but you know, it's even nicer looking at it thinking, well, I coloured it myself. So that's your watercolour sprays. And it might be for a specific bouquet, it might be because you want them to all look the same, in which case you could colour all of your flowers in that colour palette. Now your glimmer sprays, let's bring spray booth back in for the glimmers. You can actually see on here where I've had the glimmer sprays, because you can see all this beautiful mica that comes out of them. which is a waste if you're not doing it on, you could put down a piece of mat. I mean, this would be a really cool background for some of your paper crafting. You could put a bit of cardstock down. Of course, that would allow you to gather up all of those beautiful colours and create some backgrounds. Can you see how this is already drying, sort of two-tone? I'm just going to move him out of the way. Or, of course, you could do it onto your mats, in which case you could then also mop up any of the extra. So I'm going to go in with our chrysanthemum from our kit, and I'm going to use the Amethyst Glimmer Spray. Let's leave that there, actually. Now, your Glimmer Spray has mica in it, so you'll see the mica settle at the bottom. I store these horizontally in some boxes in my storage. You don't want to shake it, because as this mica starts to distribute, if you shake it, it's going to get stuck in the pump of your spray. So just pop it in your hand, roll it around to distribute that mica. So rather than a shake, we're doing a roll. And it will just, I can see there's still quite a bit at the bottom. I'm just going to give it one more roll. And then we go in with that beautiful colour. Now you can already see the gold coming. I'm going to go quite intense in the middle. I like it more saturated in the centre, and then it will diffuse out. And if I lift this up, can I get it to you without knocking the stand? No, I'm going to have to get messy fingers. You can turn it around, do the underside, but can you see where that mica is beginning to settle in the petals, and as it dries, that will become even more prominent as well, but you get a really beautiful finish. Now you could either leave it like this and allow it to dry first of all, because a lot of these slightly whiter edges will become a softer lilac colour where the paint will start to diffuse through the petals. Or, of course, you can really heavily saturate it. Now, this is the Amethyst dried. So you can see where I spray quite heavily on top, and then it just gives me lovely, softer finishes along the edges. Can you see underneath? This was completely white, but it's a much softer colour, just where I allowed the fabric to soak all of that up and do its own thing. And then you've got that beautiful finish. Now, the third one is our alcohol paints. Now, I probably just jinxed myself, but I'm clean so far. no mess. It's the alcohol inks that I was more nervous about getting everywhere. So, with the alcohol inks, you can achieve some really amazing finishes. Now, our alcohol inks are completely in stock on the website, so craftbuddyshop.com. You will be able to have a look at them all. I love the colour of this. We do have burnt orange kits in lots of different varieties of flowers. This was actually using orange zest as a base, and I'm going to go in with a secondary colour to get just those slightly different coloured tips, and that was Coral Reef. Now, obviously it's quite natural looking. It's probably a bit dark, so this is more sort of like your vintage tone of your flowers, maybe for special occasions, maybe to add onto your your gift packaging and onto your paper crafts. This is Teal Ocean and Ink Spot. I just wanted to do something a little bit different. So it's the teal base, and I went over the edges with Ink Spot, which is what I'm going to show you now. There's lots of different colours in our alcohol inks, but you get some really amazing finishes. The underneath, not so much, because, but it doesn't matter, you're not going to see it, but because all the ink begins to settle down, the bases of them do tend to get what we know alcohol ink does and why we love it, but you'll get those lovely ring spots where it's drying a little bit faster in places than in others. But this will allow you to get lots of different colours. So if you go for two colours that are of a similar colour family, so like a nice pink and a purple, or your blues and your teals, or your oranges and your yellows, you could get some really lovely finishes. And it's a little bit messier. Now I'm colouring the rose there. Shall I do, in fact, yeah, I will show you it on the rose. I know, or should we do a chrysanthemum? I'm just going to see if I've got another peony, which I don't. Let's make up a peony. Let's make up another peony. I forgot that I was colouring them with you. Rather sillily of me. I didn't make a load prepped and ready to go. So we'll make another quick one because it's a bit unfair showing you the roses when it's the peonies that come in the kit. So we'll go for 2 of petal A, 2 of petal B, and again they're so quick to make. I think that's the beauty of it. If you're having fun, you don't want to stop for another 45 minutes or an hour to make a flower, do you? We want to have the fun now. Okay, so these are all of my components to make up my other peony. And then I just need my... Man, I've got stuff everywhere. Oh, it's not mess though, is it? It's just being creative, right? That's what we do. Creative mess. So I've got my stamen centre. Let me move these up for you. My stamen centre, my base leaf, my end cap, and then we'll get the alcohol inks out. I might do this in the orange actually, or should we have a blue and teal? What do you fancy? What colour would you like? You tell me and I'll do it. I'm trying to think. I really hoped I had my favourite alcohol ink, which is the plum colour, which is absolutely beautiful. And I cannot find it. I use the alcohol inks quite a lot to colour bases for my resin work. And I think the purple one I've either used up or it's in that really safe place that's never to be found again. It's there hiding somewhere. But I think it's called Perfect Plum. Is just the most beautiful colour, and that would be gorgeous on here. But of course on the website you can have your pick of your favourite colour palettes. In your Glimmer sprays we actually do a multi-pack of 6 of them, so you can go and have a little look-sees. But of course I'm using the birthday box flowers that are completely cream and white, which means we can use whatever colours you would like. Okay, so let's cover myself up so we don't get messy. Right then, orange zest. I'm going to go in with orange zest and coral reef, which is the same one that I did with the flower, but I'm hoping it will give you a lovely effect and finish. So, with the petals, because of course it's fabric, the alcohol ink is going to start seeping into it very, very easily. So I don't tip up the bottle and pour or squeeze, I just allow it to start to seep out of the bottle. So I'm giving it ever such a slight squeeze, and you can see that it's just going to start to pour through the petals. I'm going to go in with a little bit in here. So I'm using hardly any ink at all, and I'm only touching the top of the leaf. Can you see the ink start to run down? So I'm hardly even squeezing it. There's the smallest amount of pressure. There are a few ways that you can do this. So obviously I'm pouring it directly onto the petals. You can also, once you've kind of done the outer edges of them, particularly for a very full flower like your camellia or your chrysanthemum, if you do them on a glass mat, you could at this point take it and just smush it all in. That's Naomi's technical term. You can smush all of your excess ink. I'm going to switch to the outside now so that I can see the colour going on to the petals. And can you see I'm not even squeezing the bottle, I'm allowing it almost just to run out and just encouraging it along each petal. But I'm also allowing the ink to soak down into it as well. I'm not covering the whole petal, just letting gravity do most of the hard work for me, to be honest. So of course, if you smush it into your glass mat, any of that excess alcohol ink will condense down and really seep down through. Now, I'm not worried about these little white bits because I'm going to go over with my coral reef to give it just slight variegation in colour. And because I'm going in with the second petals, can you see that it's already soaking through? So I don't need to worry, just like with the watercolour spray, I don't need to worry about having really even coverage on all of it, because after a few seconds, it will have done it for me. And I'm just pushing these petals into the layer in front of it. So my bottle isn't even tipped up. I'm just using it to spread through, and I'm really not using very much at all, so it is still a nice economical way of doing it. Now, to get those lovely different coloured tips, I would also really like to do this with some of the there's silver, there's Snow Queen, there's Gold Gilt, and there's a silver one as well that have the most amazing metallic finish to them. Now I've got Coral Reef, which is a slightly darker orange to the orange zest that's here. So I'm just going to pop a little bit onto my mat, and I'm just taking a paintbrush and I'm just going to go around the outer edges. Now it's almost indistinguishable at its wettest stage, and I do it at the wettest stage because it will allow that colour just to seep through. And unfortunately, because the alcohol ink of course is going to start to evaporate really quickly, which is why we use it for so many different crafty finishes and jobs. See where I've got these whiter edges? Because I'm just going over the tips. So I'm only taking my flat paintbrush and I'm applying the alcohol, and this is the darker alcohol ink, to the very tips and edges. So you can just about see it going on, but once it dries, it gives you such a cool effect. So I'm doing it while it's all wet because again, it's just going to help it diffuse through. But you could also do this with a completely different contrasting colour as well. I'm going to go in a little bit just to cover some of those whiter edges. So I've only used about 3 drops of my Coral Reef. Not very much at all, but it's just giving me that nice little finish in the colour of the petals. A bit in here. And once it dries, I will share a picture of it in the fans page later on. I'll also add it to the stories because then lovely Emily, who does our social media, can add it onto here as well, because once it dries you really see the difference in the colours. But you could do it with completely contrasting colour, but I always go for the lighter colour first so that you can just add in those lovely finishes, and you can just about see where that darker colour is beginning to settle. And I'm just going to go for a little bit more on top. Sometimes it's worth knowing when to stop, isn't it? You can always let it dry and go back over afterwards, but I just want to have those nice little edges. I mean, look at this, isn't that so pretty? You can already see where it's starting to take in that darker colour. If I do this nice and slowly on the camera, you can see it. Just that darker edge around the outside. Like so. Now you can again encourage these to dry with a very low heat on your heat gun, but I find that with alcohol ink you end up with lots of rings. You might want it, you know, if you're doing like a really funky mixed media project, you could get some beautiful colour effects by doing it, but you will get a lot of rings where those are drying and evaporating a little bit faster. So I tend to like to let them do their thing. And I'm just going to use up as much of this alcohol ink left as I can. Let's go for a bit more along here. And there we go. That is your 3 different ways of colouring your flowers. I should have put that lid on there so it doesn't evaporate. And then of course when your protective mats are down, you can just clean and tidy that up. Not a drop on me. She says, as soon as I stop going live, I bet I'll spill it on my chair, won't I? I'm a messy crafter. But aren't we all? So there you've got your lovely alcohol ink. We've also got our Glimmer. And look at how this is drying. This is the one that I've just taken out of the box that we were working on, that we sprayed a moment ago. Still a little bit wet, but not too bad. But you've got that beautiful mica settling in. And here, look at how the peony is beginning to dry. So it almost gives you a very similar effect as the alcohol ink, but the watercolour does the work for you, whereas I have had to add a little bit of creative flair to, of course, getting on those edges using the, sometimes you want that creative finish and you really want to feel like it was handmade. Other times with your watercolour sprays, we just need that quick fix. So obviously it's reasonably warm in here. It's a small room. I've got all my lights on, but look at how that watercolour just gives you, I mean, how natural does that look? Doesn't it look beautiful? So there we go. That is your beautiful birthday box with your 40 flowers, your camellias, your chrysanthemums, your hydrangeas and your peonies in beautiful white and cream, which gives you your complete blank canvas to colour them and have a bit of fun.